Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with an OTOS, Charles Coulombe.
OTOS.
OTOS as in serving no practical purpose or result.
You mean to say that I serve no practical purpose or result? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
You're saying that the years of cramming my head with all this random stuff have been pointless, basically.
Basically, yeah.
Okay. All right. So, what do we got?
Well, how's your week been, Charles? What's new?
Well, a lot is new. We're still dwelling in the aftermath of the Pachamama Pops. Our friend Alexander is doing the circuit tour in the States, speaking about his adventures with Pachamama and the Tiber. You know, it strikes me that it's really kind of sad that Pachamama is an earth goddess and not a water goddess, because if she were, then she could have swum.
That's sad.
Or been absorbed into the Tiber, just sort of become part of the whole thing. No, it's quite funny, really. I had a piece in in Crisis magazine about the strange coincidence that I go to church with both Alexander when I'm in the States with David Delayden, who just had a terrible setback, incidentally.
Yeah.
The terribly corrupt federal judge stuck him with millions of dollars, but they're going to drag it up to the next court. So I would urge anyone who's got a spare shekel to give it to the Thomas More Association that are battling on his behalf against the infanticidal forces of Planned Parenthood and their pocket judiciary. And by the way, that's not an exaggeration. Apparently both of the prosecutors and several of the judges involved have deep ties to Planned Parenthood. And in a proper setup, they would have recused themselves.
What happened to checks and balances? What happened how can that just happen? Isn't there some greater authority to say, Judge, you're no good for this?
No, actually. We saw that in California with the state court.
The gay guy.
Proposition 8. Yeah, the judge was gay, and he should have recused himself. But
okay.
See, who's going to enforce the law? When Al Capone runs the city, who's going to be enforcing anything?
I'm sorry for laughing because
well, let's be honest.
No, I know. Let's be honest. Our lives are truly satire. I mean, this is satire.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, again, even stop and think about it. You're right. I mean, all right. Alexander did a great thing by throwing the Pachamamas into the Tiber, but how ridiculous a situation is it where he has to do that? And, I was asked, actually, I believe it was you asked me earlier off the show, maybe it was somebody else, why Alexander's popularity has been so instantaneous. Well, it's very simple. We all wanted to do what he did in our heart of hearts. We all felt outrage and a sense of ineffectuality. Our bosses, the people, whether it's in church or state, the people whom we are taught to obey, have gotten completely wild. They've got completely nuts. And so here, a guy comes along and does what every red-blooded Catholic boy wanted to do. Which is, and I told him afterwards, I said if he had asked me about it, which he didn't, which I don't blame him, but if he had, I wouldn't have known what to advise him. Because there's also a bit of cowardice and a bit of fear of doing the wrong thing, except that it was so manifestly the right thing. And that's the world we live in. We live in a world where the judiciary protects an organization that sells baby parts and is dedicated to eugenics. I mean, that's the world we live in. That's where we are. Eat it, people. Own it. Name it. Claim it. Tame it. We just have to admit our masters are what our masters are. Scum of the earth. That's right. Seek bloody Heil, baby. As my late father used to say, life is like soup. Scum rises to the top. He had a lot of sayings, my late father did.
Yeah.
But that one, and the thing is, it has gotten to the point of satire. It's gotten to the point of the ridiculous, of the silly, the stupid. And this does not bode well, however, because any society, whether ecclesiastical or political, cannot run well if the subjects have contempt for their rulers. And it's even worse when the contempt is earned. It just... So, in the immortal words of Betty Davis in All About Eve, fasten your seatbelts, boys. It's going to be a bumpy ride. And she was right.
Anything else going on? Traveling to Constantinople or Japan or something?
No, nowhere like that. It's been a quiet week here in Trumau, my hometown, out in the Austrian woods. In fact, it's the Martinmas season, and apart from lights in the cemetery, today, Saturday, which is when we're actually doing the show, I had a lunch of Martinmas goose. Oh, my stars. Honestly, I'm sitting here feeling like I've waddled out of Thanksgiving dinner. It started with goose pate. Slice after slice of bread and goose pate. And then came a big bowl of goose soup. Heavens. It was so good. But then, pièce de résistance, the goose. And its accompaniment was a sort of dumpling, and with it, sauerkraut shot through with bacon. And a goose gravy that was just out of this world. And that was followed up by a dessert that was chocolate mousse cake with schlagobers, the whipped cream. But it's real whipped cream. It's not
Cool Whip.
Yeah, it's not a petroleum jelly product like Cool Whip. And it a scoop of hazelnut ice cream. I get one waddling out of the old Café Vess, barely able to move. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, if you are ever in Trumau, Austria, you owe it to yourself to visit the Café Vess. And this was not a paid announcement, just so you know.
Very good.
Next week, and I'll have seen it by the time we do this again, I'll be going on Wednesday, the 20th of November, to a Requiem Mass for the Archduke Otto, son of Emperor Karl, whom I knew, at the Kapuzinerkirche in beautiful downtown Vienna. So anyway, that's what's going right now. That's about it.
Pretty good, Charles. All right, thank you. Let's move on to the memes of production.
Oh, have they been renationalized?
Yes, for the common good.
Oh,
Yeah.
so what do we got?
We've got one meme today. It's from Peter. Tumblr House and Charles Coulombe sleeping on the job again. Meme credit goes in part to my good buddy and formerly fellow homeschooler Jason F. And so I guess I'm sleeping, you're sleeping, and it says when shilling for books and being a tyrant gets to be too tiring.
See, I'll bet it does tire you out too, being a tyrant especially.
That reminds me.
Yeah.
I don't say it's enough. Free shipping at tumblrhouse.com. Or all orders over $25 get free shipping. Can you believe that, Charles? We've got over
Oh, wow.
700 books in the store. We pride ourselves on the orthodoxy of our selection. We've got books from all sorts of saints, historians. Oh, it's really unbelievable. tumblrhouse.com. Go there right now, and for your shopping needs this Christmas season.
Wow. That's beautiful. I had no idea. What he said, what this guy said, the big cheese, yes.
Big cheese, yep.
Absolutely. Or as they call him in his native language, il formaggio grande.
What's formaggio?
Cheese.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay.
I don't know what else I can call you.
Okay.
I don't know what were you expecting? The mozzarella
I don't know.
venti?
Sometimes you're tricky. Sometimes you're sneaky with some of these things.
Listen, I'm odios. I serve no practical function whatsoever. You don't have to worry. You're safe.
Good. Okay. Again, shout out to patrons. We had we had an especially fun pre-show. There was a lot of laughs on this one.
It's true.
So I think it was probably about 20-30 minutes again. If for $1 a month, I think it's really a worthy investment. If you guys don't feel like you're getting enough on the full episode, you want a little bit more, there's really quality content on the pre-show. So, On to the questions, shall we?
All right.
First questions are from James. Before he asks the question, he'd like to say, on behalf of a group of young Catholics in Denmark, of all places, thank you both for your work. Many a conversation has been had amongst us about your show. It's truly important that the Catholic, monarchist, and traditionalist position is well represented on YouTube. And your work to do this is much appreciated. Keep doing what you're doing, you absolute mad lads.
Ooh.
I like that.
Well,
so we're glad trad mad lads.
Let me see if I can say that. Glad trad mad lads. I like that. Glad trad mad lad. I can say that. Glad trad mad trad. Glad trad mad lad. All right.
There you go.
Well, you see, them Danes you got to watch. I'm actually very keen on going up to Denmark, to tell you the truth, because I can get up there fairly inexpensively. And I've gotten to know a few people up there. So get in touch with Mr. Franchini, lads, and perhaps you'll see the old man up there. You can take me to the Tivoli Gardens and buy me an ice cream cone or something. But what? Oh, you mean I shouldn't have an ice cream cone in the Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen? Is that what you're saying?
Far be it from me to actually say that, Charles.
Are you against ice cream cones?
No.
Are you against the Tivoli Gardens?
No.
Are you against wonderful, wonderful Copenhagen, salty old queen of the sea?
What is that from?
That is from Hans Christian Andersen, starring Danny Kaye. Hans Christian Andersen.
Isn't he a writer?
He is. Wrote fairy tales.
Oh, okay.
But he's 19th century. Danny Kaye played him. And there have been a lot of Great Danes, and I don't mean the dogs, and I don't mean Hamlet. Kai Munk is one of the best Danes of the 20th century I know of. King Christian X, who was a great, great fellow. And I rather like their current queen, Margaret II.
Good.
So every New Year's Eve, she gives them kind of a verbal smack around.
How's the food in Denmark? What kind of food are they doing over there?
Well, there's a reason Babette's Feast was done up there. Isaac Dennison, another one of my favorites. It's plain but good, they like to say.
A lot of fish?
Yes.
Yeah.
Herring and things like that.
Yeah.
You bet. They, in fact, the herring is a big thing in Danish fisheries. And usually, you've seen all those cans of sardines and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They're either Danish or Norwegian, and they always have a king on the cover, Oscar or somebody. Anyway, he's Swedish, but still, he's also king of Norway. You don't need to know that.
Yeah.
Point is, great to hear from the Danes. So, shout out to the Danish contingent.
This first question. I've been reading The Lord by Romano Guardini, and I was interested in hearing your thoughts on the chap.
Well, Guardini was an interesting guy. I've never read The Lord. I've seen the book, but I've never actually read it. I've read other things he wrote, though. Fascinating fellow, very typical. Despite his name, he was actually German, Italian descent. I think he was born in Italy, but he was raised in Germany. He was very much a German intellect. He was one of the big influences on Pope Benedict, actually.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. And so, yeah, he's pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, I know he's incredibly influential. Everyone cites him.
Romano Guardini, yeah.
I don't know much about him. So
he's worth looking into.
He's worth looking into. Okay.
Yeah.
But you haven't read The Lord.
I have not.
Yeah. Okay. James's second question. In Book 1, Chapter 9 of City of God, Augustine writes that in this life, the good are sometimes chastised along with the wicked when they love their lives too much to warn them of their sinfulness of their acts. He makes an exception for when they seek a better opportunity or wish to avoid exacerbating the wicked person's condition or disheartening them. Getting admonished does tend to be disheartening, so I'm trying to think about how this would work in practice. What's your take on this? And how much should the reprimand of someone's sin inform our preaching of the gospel to them?
Well, it depends on the person. I mean, obviously, if you've got someone living in adultery, that's different from somebody who's, just got the wrong set of views, but isn't that corrupt morally. And again, the thing you got to bear in mind too is that today, people are so personalized about everything that just reciting the abstract teaching will often get somebody to strike out at you. There's not an easy way to do this, and it's not one size fits all. That's the important thing to bear in mind. You have to know your audience, whether it's one person or a group of people. Now, the less you know them, the more abstract you have to be, because you don't know their condition. But to the degree that you know their condition, you do have to advert to it somehow.
Yeah, it is difficult because people personalize it so incredibly much. I'm always walking on eggshells, because where you say something about Novus Ordo, like I don't care for altar girls. I'm sorry, I don't care for 50 Eucharistic ministers. And you're not admonishing them, or you're not attacking them, but
they take it
but they've acquiesced to it for so long. It's like you're attacking them.
Yeah,
and I'm just saying I don't like it, and it's distracting to me and the stuff, but they take it personally, and
it's true. It's true of everything these days. I mean, if you say that, I don't know, the United States was wrong to go after Emperor Karl in World War I. Oh yeah, well my grandpa fought in World War I. That's got nothing to do with it.
Yeah,
that's not the point. God bless your grandpa. I'm sure he was brave. I hope he came home safely. That's nice. That's not what we're talking about. Your grandpa was not determining policy at Versailles or at the White House. So, it's just, there is no easy way to do this stuff. You've got to try to be very aware of your audience, as I say. Very aware of the people to whom you're speaking.
Yeah.
Other than that, pray a lot, especially to the Holy Ghost for inspiration.
Okay, next question is from William. Greetings from Brazil, Mr. Franchini and Mr. Coulombe. I'm a huge fan of Off the Menu. Thank you both for this excellent service. May God bless you. My question to Mr. Coulombe is about the just war theory. A few months ago, I watched a video on YouTube channel with Father Emmanuel McCarthy. He's radically against any type of violence toward our enemies. He wrote 2 books about that subject, but I didn't read any of them. All Things Flee, For Thou Fleest Me, and Just War Theory, The Logic of Deceit. In the first one, he makes the case for a non-violent way towards friends and enemies as taught by our Lord. In the second, he goes deep in this non-violent radicalism and argues that the just war theory replaced the non-violent path of the Gospels. He calls the just war theory, quote, a pagan philosophical notion, end quote. For this theory has begun with the writings of Cicero and was equivocally accepted by the Catholic Church 300 years after the non-violent teachings of Jesus Christ, and this error remains until today. Please, Mr. Coulombe, can you put some light on this matter? Is a just war theory only a way created to avoid what our Lord expects from us? I always thought that using proportional means of defense to stop an unjust attack was acceptable and even the right thing to do in some situations. Is that wrong somehow?
No, it's not wrong. Firstly, shout out to Brazil. Bum 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 ba da ba da bum 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 ba da. What?
That's okay.
Brazil. Dee 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 dee. Bum 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 ba da ba da bum bum bum
Okay.
bum ba da ba da bum bum. All right.
Okay, I guess.
Well, look, I did that little bit for Denmark. You think I shouldn't do something for Brazil?
It's a little cliche.
Oh, and Hans Christian Andersen and wonderful, wonderful Copenhagen isn't cliche? Well, forget it. Anyway,
Okay.
never mind. The point is, where was I? Oh, yes, right. Well, I don't know this priest. What I do know is that he's wrong. Why do I know this? Because he's basically asking us to accept that most of the fathers and all the doctors of the church, all the popes and councils have been wrong, and he's right. Well, the problem with that is that he would have to be holier than the aforementioned saints. And his very priesthood comes from an organization that, according to him, has gotten everything wrong. So, I mean, it's wonderful that he thinks he's the most brilliant man on earth. That's nice. But I don't think it's true. And I am afraid that you were quite correct in your summation of the thing. I wouldn't bother with him any further if I were you, William. That's my considered opinion. There's nothing worse than a priest talking drivel, and a priest who says the church has always been wrong is a priest talking drivel. The minute a priest tells you that the church has departed from the gospel from the very beginning, then everything is up for grabs. Why do we have a priesthood? Where in the gospel do we have a paid priesthood? We don't, actually. We have the apostles, we have the disciples, but the church's tradition and teaching tells us that the priesthood comes from them. But the same authority gave us the just war theory. I will make a prediction that Father McCarthy does not stay in the church all that much longer.
Well, I can see that because there's no foundation. If you say everything's wrong, what are you doing?
Well, not only is everything wrong, you're right.
Oh, well, that too, yeah.
I mean, it's one thing if everything is just that, yeah, they got it all wrong. But I know better. I know better than St. Augustine. I know better than St. Thomas Aquinas. I know better than St. Bonaventure. I know better than all those guys. Me, I am El Supremo. Well, you're the church of you, is what you are. So,
Okay.
those are my 3 cents worth. Bum 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 Brazil.
Have you ever been to Brazil?
Once,
Really?
yes,
How was
many
that?
years ago. It was wonderful. I never did meet the girl from Ipanema. I wanted to. Never met her.
All right. Next question. Charles, why does the church allow the Eastern Rite to venerate certain Eastern Orthodox saints when the Western Rite does not? Are these people truly saints?
Well, the answer is the church allows it to be venerated because they were, although they lived after 1054, they were not, so far as can be told from their writings, etc., anti-Roman. That is to say, they weren't schismatic. And the signs of holiness that the church accepts the signs of saintliness, the miracles and all that. It isn't that the Western Rite doesn't allow you to venerate them. You can venerate them. You can venerate anyone the Eastern rites venerate as saints. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. Constantine the Great. Now, he is Saint Constantine the Great. We don't have a day for him on the calendar, but there are shrines to him in Sicily and Sardinia, southern Italy, and even here in Tyrol. There are shrines to Constantine the Emperor. So you can venerate him as a saint if you like. Mind you, you'll have a lot of priests and lay people and other people who don't know anything getting upset when you do it. You can't possibly venerate Constantine. He was no saint. But the church has said otherwise. And see, there again, beware, just because you dislike someone for whatever reason, doesn't mean they're not a saint. I don't like Paul VI. I don't. I lived under him. I'm grateful for Romano Vitae, but frankly, he made my life hell when I was young. What he unleashed. But if the church says he's a saint, I have to accept the fact that he's in heaven. Now, if I don't, I'm saying I'm the judge of the living and the dead, and I know better than the church does.
You
And then
are?
I'm just like poor Father McCarthy there in Brazil, driveling out and doing the bossa nova. Oh, and by the way, there's no mention of the bossa nova in the Gospels.
Do Eastern Orthodox saints, how did they become saints in the Eastern Orthodox Church? I mean, is there a unique process over there?
Well, yes and no, not like us. What happens basically is that they've retained the very primitive way of making saints we had in the West before the current system came into use. That is to say, it's all through local initiative. A cultus grows up. There are people who get healed. Sometimes they'll dig up the body and have a look, see at what's left, whether they're incorrupt or not. And then eventually, if the cultus grows, then remember the Orthodox churches, because there's several of them. They're all very much on their own. So, for instance, the Georgian Orthodox Church has a lot of saints that are not observed in the rest of the Orthodox Church. They're accepted simply because the Georgian Orthodox Church is accepted as an Orthodox Church. But they don't have the same popularity that they would do in Georgia, if you see what I'm saying.
So, okay. So there's a local following. Do they require miracles?
Well, yeah. Again, it's not. They don't go into them the way we do. They don't make inquiry the way we do. But yeah, there have to be miracles. It's not nearly so organized a thing as we do, and that's it's virtually by popular acclamation.
That's kind of weird.
Well,
I mean,
it's the way.
well, I know we used to do it, like we did it with St. Patrick,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
but isn't it a little different though? Because like with St. Patrick, there's like a million. I mean, there's like tons of miracles, but then when
Well,
you
it's the same with these people, and of course, mind you, when someone gets acclaimed a saint in the Orthodox Church, um, churches plural, the bishops pass off on it and all that, but it's certainly, one would have to say, it's a much less reliable process than what we do. I think that would be fair to say.
okay,
I mean, it does give rise to a lot of questions that ours do not.
well, okay, what happens if we bring the Orthodox into the fold? What happens to those saints?
Well, the ones that were anti-Roman probably would not be venerated.
But I
The
mean,
ones,
does the Catholic Church have to give a special recognition to those saints then?
I
Is
don't
that
know. We'll see if it ever happens.
okay?
Um, I mean, obviously, some of them they'd have to come up with some kind of a decision on because they're very widely venerated. Tsar Nicholas II, for instance, and the imperial family, they're venerated as martyrs. And see, that's one thing. If you're martyred for the church, uh, the Orthodox immediately accept you as a saint.
Well,
They
I
have
mean,
a
that's
whole.
fair to say. I mean, that's pretty.
No, I know it is. But with us, it'd be the question of, well, did they really die for the faith alone, or was it for some other reason?
Okay.
But they don't ask those questions. If in the popular mind, they died for the faith, they died for the faith. That's it.
Interesting. Okay.
But as far as the Orthodox saints that Eastern Catholics are allowed to venerate, they're allowed to venerate them. So are Western Catholics.
Okay. Next question is from Michael. I have a question regarding the practice of hoodoo, also known as
I don't
voodoo,
know
I
who
guess.
don't, who do or who don't.
What's up with hoodoo?
Well, who do that? Who do what they can when they can? I don't know. Who do that? You do that?
That's a different word for voodoo, I guess.
It is.
Sort of like your Scandinavian and Scandahoovian that you allude
That's right.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Hoodoo and voodoo. Hoodoo, voodoo. Do who? Hoodoo. You're looking very
Those are almost
confused.
actual lines in the movie Labyrinth with David Bowie. Have you ever seen that movie? It's kind of a fantasy 80s movie with Jennifer Connelly and David Bowie. The epic. He's the Goblin King.
I could see him as the Goblin King. I'm a big Jennifer Connelly fan, but I never saw that.
It was a good. I recommend Labyrinth. Good movie. Okay. So Michael's question regarding the practice of hoodoo, specifically in New Orleans. It seems to me that practitioners of this tradition are quite content to incorporate Catholic practices and devotions into their magic and maintain that they are practicing Catholics. What is the rationale behind this? Since the Church clearly condemns witchcraft, how do they justify this large contradiction? Perhaps Charles could explore the mentality behind this.
Well, if I were not a nice person, I would say, I don't know what you're talking about. Ask the Amazon Synod. But that would be very unkind. What? That would be very unkind, I said. So I'm going to answer the question. I'm just pointing out that what gave a problem to practitioners of hoodoo before, since the Amazon Synod, shouldn't. All they're doing is worshiping ancestral deities. What's wrong with that? What?
I'm so over that. I'm bored with that. Let's get to the next scandal already. It's played out. It really
Good
is.
on you, boss.
It's played out. Let's get something new. Let's get some other talking point, because I'm
Okay,
done. I'm done
okay.
with that.
All right, fine. Pope Francis comes to New Orleans on an American tour and takes part in the hoodoo ceremony. Would that please you?
That would no, that would not please me. How dare you, Charles?
Would it get you excited at least? Would it scandalize you?
I don't want to think about those thoughts.
What, you don't want to think about?
Why are you making me think bad thoughts?
What's bad thoughts? I'm just taking by extension. Holy Father comes to New Orleans. He goes to the Voodoo Museum, which has a sort of a working voodoo temple attached to it. And he goes in and does some of their, shubaluba stuff. Maybe a little brick dust on his forehead to
I don't
ward
know.
off the plat eyes.
I think that I don't think that would happen. Why are you doing this?
Well, there's a lot one thought wouldn't happen, but one were wrong, weren't one.
Well, that's called the logical fallacy of slippery slope.
Oh, that's right. I just goes living down that slope. Slip slide, no way. Yeah, slip slide. All right, fine. Well, if I will put on my more serious anthropological mask, leave the Pope and his idols out of it, and his deities, and instead we'll focus on who do and who don't.
Got it.
All right. Well, basically, hoodoo is, of course, the New Orleans variant of voodoo, which is part of a family of syncretistic Afro-European religions of the Caribbean. It includes things like Santeria in Cuba, Obeah in the Lesser Antilles, and so forth. These tend to conflate Catholicism and kind of broken memories of various African religions. And one of the ways that this was done was to conflate various Catholic saints with various African deities whom they resembled. And so, Saint Jean-Baptiste, for instance, in Voodoo, became connected with a deity they call Baron Samedi, Baron Saturday, who's a white man with a top hat and is sort of a god of death. Yeah, I know, it's all very outre. The question is, at what point does very devout Catholic veneration of the saints end and praying to pagan deities begin? That's a question. A lot of people who are involved in this kind of thing see it more from this aspect of the saint. They don't see the deity at all. Others are different. They see the saint simply as a mere covering for the deity. So a lot depends on the person involved and what their actual views of the matter are. What they think they're praying to.
I think what is... I think it's a head scratcher for us.
Yeah.
Because we live in a materialistic society. And so the thought of witchcraft and this other stuff is extraordinary. It's unusual. It's, it's out there. And so we ask ourselves, how could you possibly condone this? I've actually known people who were witches who've converted. Some middle-aged women. I guess there's good light magic and dark magic or whatever, and they've converted. And it's more casual over there. They don't have the same oh, whoa, this is magic. They
don't have the same distinctions. To give you an example, in southern Louisiana, I mean, look, our superstitions are purely materialistic. Every culture has superstition. And the question is, what is it? Ours is scientificist. Ours is purely materialistic. Theirs, because they are not as stupid as we are, they get to be stupid in other ways.
Exactly.
That's part of the price of being human.
Because they could ask us, well, you guys are live life like you're materialist, as if God doesn't exist, as if there's no invisible, unseen forces.
No invisible world.
How could you do that? See, they could ask us that question.
They could, and they'd be right to do so. I wrote years ago for a black magazine in Louisiana called Creole, in Lafayette, Louisiana. And it was, to this day, the editrix, Ruth Foote, still a friend of mine. And that was a fun magazine to write for. I very much enjoyed it. But they had a column on Creole customs. And the lady who wrote it, wonderful woman. But one day, she and our editrix and myself met in New Orleans, and we had an incredibly fun lunch. But she told us some of the stories of Gris-Gris, which is the folk magic of the area. She said how when she was a little girl, she and her brothers and sisters were not allowed to go barefoot because these conjure doctors would make these little packets of things to bring harm to people, Gris-Gris. And if you encountered them, if you stepped on them, the Gris-Gris, even though it wasn't intended for you, it would go to you. So, but if you wore shoes, it wouldn't be a problem. And so they were never allowed to go barefoot. And that was very typical in that part of Louisiana. Now, how did the people who were making those packages justify themselves? I'm sure they didn't. That kind of witch, in any culture, has given themselves over to the powers of darkness. They're not about justifying anything. Certainly not to you or me. Now, what about those people who, shall we say, made it a business, as it were, to repel that kind of spell? That's a different story. They often would think of themselves as good Catholics. And I don't know. It's interesting to note that Marie Laveau, who is probably the best known voodoo queen of New Orleans, she gave up the practice before she died and became a very, very devout Catholic. She also was an extreme supporter of the Confederacy. So I'll just let that sit in the air for a little bit.
Yeah. When people who are into that stuff convert, they handle the spiritual realities, I find, very well.
Well, they do.
They're not coming from materialism. They're coming from some other place.
They're coming. They had part of the truth already.
Yeah. And
a key part of the truth, which is that life is like an iceberg. What you can see is far bigger than what you can.
Yeah, there you go.
And that is the hardest thing for a modern to overcome, is that superstition, that all there is what you can see. And I don't want to sound as though I'm endorsing hoodoo.
Of course not.
Or even who don't.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that we bear in mind that the people who do practice it are coming from an extremely different mindset to ours.
Right. No, well, I mean, we've had questions like this before, where but applied to different things. I think someone asked, like, how could Chesterton be, endorse the French Revolution or be nice, right, or something like that? And you explained, well, how could we be so apathetic when it comes to abortion?
Yeah.
And lethargic. See, it's each
each time and each place has its own, shall we say, Achilles heel.
Yeah.
Part of the problem with being fallen human beings is that not only are we not perfect, we're far from perfect, but we do spend a good piece of our time ignoring how we're far from perfect.
Right.
So we can look at our hoodoo friends in New Orleans and say, what a bunch of superstitious louts. Except that we live our lives as though the unseen didn't exist. We live as practical materialists.
Right.
And that's our superstition.
And thinking about the stuff which we've sort of accepted as typical or usual, or maybe we're despairing over it, like abortion. What I've been thinking about that a lot, in terms of, will God judge us based on how, what we do on this issue, how active we are? Because, and I was thinking about the good Germans, right?
Yeah.
And during the Holocaust, like, in a sense, they had, because we regard them like, oh, how could they just be on the side
The way we
and do
do.
nothing? But then to me, it seems like we are actually more responsible than the good Germans, because we can do this through legislation, whereas, you can't just like picket Hitler and say, oh, stop doing this, whereas we have
Well,
a power.
yeah, and also there's the fact that they did try to conceal the Holocaust to some degree.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of, shall we say, plausible deniability a lot of Germans had.
Got
None
it.
of us have that.
Yeah, none of
We all know what's
exactly.
good.
Exactly.
There's no plausible deniability for us. So again, if you're tempted to feel moral or intellectual superiority to anyone, especially to people in the past or in faraway places, look at these sorts of considerations first. And then, if you wonder how you can do it, how I can do it, then you'll know how they're able to.
Yeah. There you go. Just, I guess, to continue the tangent I've taken this on, what do you think about our culpability in terms of the judgment? It
I
seems
don't
like
know.
there's going to be some, I don't know. I feel
I hope
like,
not. I hope not that much. I pray not that much. But I mean, I've written about this rather recently, actually. I don't know. And of course, as you can imagine, getting closer to my own end, it's something that bothers me.
bothers me too. I'm just trying to figure out how to get more involved. Um,
Hard to say. I mean, and you see, the problem is too that if you want anything at radical variance from what the regime wants, you will suffer for it. You will be punished. You look at Operation Rescue, you look at poor David DeLayden. The regime punishes those who make a difference. The price for not being punished is to not make a difference. But then, how culpable are you? And what will it be like on our judgment day? I pray God be merciful to me, a sinner. Anyway, what else we got?
we've got 3 questions from Brian.
Brian, you sent 3 questions.
First question, Charles, what is your opinion on the Shah of Iran?
He's dead.
I
He
like that.
is.
Okay, well,
He is dead.
the Habsburgs are dead too.
No, there are a lot of Habsburgs.
The
They're all
Habsburg you
alive.
wrote a book on is dead.
Oh, he's dead. Yeah.
How come you won't say that for a question directed toward him?
I would.
No, you would not.
I wouldn't pray to the
There's
Shah.
no way.
I wouldn't pray to the Shah.
Okay, well, there's that.
Okay.
Anyhow, what is your opinion on the Shah of Iran? I like that it returned monarchy to Persia, but I have also heard that he was a CIA puppet.
One of the things, and this is not a critique meant for you, Brian. It's just a general observation. One of the things that drives me crazy is when people are commenting on historical figures and they preface remarks with, "I've heard that." That could mean anything. I've heard that George Washington was a transvestite. What? What? Who said that? Well, I've heard that.
There was a critique of media in general on both Fox. Actually, I think it was directed particularly at Fox, where the news stories would break, and they introduce things by with people are saying. Oh, people are saying this. people are saying that. In other words, they didn't cite the source. It's just
No, people are saying it's crazy. I mean, certainly the CIA assisted him in getting his throne back. But if he had been a real CIA puppet, we would never have greased the skids for him the way Jimmy Carter did. Which, by the way, was one of the stupidest things any president, even one of our stupidest presidents, ever did. Because the overthrow of the Shah was the gift that is kept on giving. Imagine, if you will, that instead of the Iranian Revolution, you know why that happened. It happened because the CIA stopped funding the Ayatollah in Paris, who was living in happy funded exile.
Mm-hmm.
That's what made him go back to Iran and begin the whole damn thing. I mean, as it was Nixon who said so very, very well, we greased the skids for the Shah. Imagine that we hadn't done that, and that he would have died as Shah of Iran. His son would have succeeded. And instead of there being what they are, they're fighting that horrible war with Iraq, and there are things over the Persian Gulf and all this stuff that they're going through now, that they were an American ally. Gee, what a thing, what a thought. Oh, and they wouldn't have be having to wear burqas either. Imagine. But no, Jimmy Carter, the smart man, had to say, oh, human rights in Iran, they're just terrible. We got to bring in the Ayatollah. That boy got to fix up all the human rights. Well, he sure did. Stupid peanut farmer.
When you're stupid, bad things happen, as a fellow once said.
Yes, indeed. Jimmy Carter is living proof. What else you got?
Do you know of any books discussing the different schools of Catholic thought, such as Thomism, Scotism, etc., and how they handle theological questions differently?
I do. I'll recommend Father Copleston's multi-volume history of philosophy, especially the section on medieval philosophy.
Nice. Brian's third question. Charles, I have heard criticism of the Ressurectifix. Merging words resurrection with crucifix, as it does not depict a suffering Christ in line with the modern world's aversion to suffering. Nevertheless, even my SSPX missal has one with Christ crowned as King and High Priest. I am particularly drawn to these two attributes of Christ and see no problem with it. Do you?
I don't, but that is so long as we never lose sight of the crucified Christ, which is why the cross over the altar, or at least a crucifix should be on the altar, always reminding us of the sacrifice of Calvary, because it's in the sacrifice and not the resurrection that the Eucharist comes. So the trick is to keep these things in balance.
That reminds me of one of our local parishes. For Stations of the Cross, this priest adds an extra station.
Yes, of course.
The resurrection.
I don't want it to end on an unhappy note.
It's so stupid.
I know it is.
Why don't you add the glorious mysteries to the sorrowful mysteries? Why don't you? While you're at it, why don't you just merge the two? Because we can't just contemplate the sorrowful mysteries. That's too sad.
You know, I've suddenly flashed on when you said that on Mel Brooks's great film, The Producers, where Roger Debris declares, "We've got to change the whole of the third act. They're losing the war. It's too depressing." Well, I don't know what to tell you, Roger. It's just the way it went. This is a wonderful line. I had no idea that when they said the Third Reich, they meant Germany. It's filled with all sorts of little historical goodies like that.
I
Anyway,
love that. What a classic.
yeah, it tremendous show. But at any rate, the question had, so long as you don't lose sight of the crucified Lord, there's nothing wrong with venerating the resurrected one,
Yeah.
or as high priest, as king. There was a church in, no, we have two churches in the Los Angeles area dedicated to Christ the King. One is in the fabulous Hancock Park section called, oddly enough, Christ the King. And as you come in, they've got a big statue outdoors. It was very controversial when it was put up, of Christ standing on the globe, crowned as king with the orb and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Very in your face. And then the renewed Reredos, the organization scooped out the Reredos completely, but they placed it. There's a very beautiful crowned Christ, resurrected Christ over the altar. They have a crucifix too, lower, but it's very, very beautiful. The other is in Atwater, beautiful Atwater, called Cristo Rey, which was founded by Cristero refugees in the 20s. But again, over the altar, they have a statue of Christ standing on the globe. But on the globe are various historical crowns at his feet. He's got a crown on his head.
Yeah.
But they're different, like the crown of St. Stephen and the crown of Charlemagne and various other crowns. The St. Edward's crown for the British. They're all there on this globe at his feet. That comes out of the 20s. It's very lovely. But then under that, atop the tabernacle, is a regular crucifix.
I have a random question for you.
Okay.
What is the first crown in human history that we know of?
I'll hazard a guess that it's probably the crown of the two crowns of Egypt.
For the
The
pharaoh?
red crown and the white crown. Yeah, Pharaoh.
Why two crowns?
Well, because he was king of Upper Egypt and king of Lower Egypt. And they were originally separate countries. And then they were united. And the two crowns were united. Now, it could be that there was a crown in Babylon. Or Sumeria or somewhere like that.
Okay. It's interesting.
Yeah, because you know what the fellow said when he became king?
What?
This is my crowning achievement.
Monarchist jokes.
Yep.
Okay, our final question today is from Ruth.
Okay, Ruth.
Can Charles talk about Avignon and papal history?
Yes.
And please do so.
Okay. Well,
you're not going to get me this time. You're not going
to... Okay. Avignon is a city on the Rhone in southern France. A beautiful old city. Lovely medieval place. And after Boniface VIII was sort of abused by the King of France and died, his successor was elected. He was a Frenchman, and he moved to Avignon. And eventually built there the beautiful Palais des Papes. This was the time of the Avignon papacy. Rome went to rack and ruin. We're talking about the 1300s now. And Rome was in terrible shape. But Avignon had a glittering court, a glittering papal court. And the area around it was called the Comtat Veneration. And in addition to the Palais du Pape, you had the local vineyards produce a wine, Chateauneuf du Pape, which was very delicious, and I recommend it highly. Avignon was a very, very pleasant place, and as a result, although the popes knew they probably should go back to Rome, pope after pope decided, well, stay a little longer. Finally, in the 1370s, Saint Catherine of Siena, and various other people were able to influence the then Pope to go back to Avignon, to Rome, rather. He did. He died because he moved back to Avignon, died shortly after that. But then they had another election for Pope in Rome, and the cardinals split. The French cardinals refused to accept the one that had been elected. They fled to Avignon, and that began the Great Schism that went on for year after year after year until 1413. We had two popes, one in Rome, one in Avignon. And eventually we had a third one in Pisa. And finally, Emperor Sigismund, the Holy Roman Emperor, following the example of his predecessor, Constantine, convoked a church council to end the schism, and that became the Council of Constance. So that's the story of the papacy in Avignon. But interestingly enough, the city and the area around remained part of the Holy See in papal hands until the French Revolution. And so, when in 1713, the French, having been defeated in the War of Spanish Succession, recognized Queen Anne as the Queen of Great Britain and de-recognized James the Third and Seventh, her younger brother and the Stuart heir. He left French territory and went to Avignon. And he lived there for a few years until he moved to Rome. And that's where he spent the rest of his life. So now you know.
Is there, do you recommend any books on just a broader scope of papal history?
Well, yes, I do. Of course, there's a brilliant book called, Vicars of Christ. Vicars of Christ by Charles Coulombe, available wherever fine Tumblr House books are sold.
Exactly. Yes, $24.95.
What does it feel like? What does it feel like, Shilling book? Anyway, yes.
Feels great. Shilling Catholic books is life.
It doesn't make you feel sleepy.
You know, honestly, everyone's shilling something. Everyone's shilling something, and why would so many people begrudge me shilling Catholic books? I think that's diabolic influence.
Well, have you considered shilling Pachamama miniatures?
See, no, that is of the devil. That suggestion is of the devil.
No, but think of it. You could sell them for people to throw into streams. That way they could feel they were somehow part of it all. And they could be small and cheap, so people wouldn't have to spend a lot of money.
Someone is actually going to do that. Some pauper is going to make a small investment in those statues and stand on that bridge and sell those.
And sell them so you could throw them into the Tiber. That actually would be a good idea. The man would make a lot of money. You can see how much wish fulfillment people would have. You know, I'm really feeling down. I think I'm going to run over to the Ponte San Angelo and toss in a Pachamama. Probably the river pollution people would object, though.
Yeah, probably.
You'd end up with enough wood to build a second bridge.
Yeah, that's true. Wow, a bridge of Pachamamas. Well, yeah. Vatican wanted to build. They want to build bridges.
That's one way to do it. Build a bridge of Pachamamas. Oh gosh! You know why you don't see Pachapapa?
This is the third episode in a row you have gone into this territory. Go ahead. Why don't you see Pachapapa? Go ahead.
Well, simply because he's an exaggerated figure like Pachamama. That's all.
Yeah. Are you going to leave it at that? Are you going to...
Well, no, I mean, just like her breast and stomach are huge, so is his defining organ.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay, thank you, Charles. Okay, time for the book.
The book.
Visits to the Blessed Sacrament and the Blessed Virgin Mary by St. Alphonsus Liguori. Woo! Published by Tan Books.
Yes. Shout out to Tan.
Yeah. So this has a lot of different meditations, over 30 meditations, designed for when you go do some Eucharistic adoration. I'm going to read one of them just so you can get a feel. Here is our Jesus saying to us that he takes delight. Oh, because it has you read first. It has you read a passage first, and then there's a reflection. Here is our Jesus saying to us that he takes delight in the company of men. Our Jesus, who was not satisfied with dying for love of us when he was on earth, but wished to remain with us even after his death in the Blessed Sacrament. Quote, "O men," Saint Teresa cries out, "how can you offend a God who says that it is in your company he takes delight?" Jesus takes his delight in our company. Shall not we take ours in his? We especially who have had the honor to be welcomed into his palace. Certainly those subjects whom a king allows to enter his own palace consider themselves very greatly honored. Here is the palace of our king. Here where we now are with Jesus Christ. Let us learn to thank him for the privilege and avail ourselves of his company to talk to him. And it goes on. But just on that reflection, thinking of the dynamic of God, who is, God doesn't look for, God is not pleasure seeking. He's fine the way he is, but yet he says, I take delight in the company of men.
And and that is from Scripture.
And that's from Scripture. So
yeah, he says.
Yeah.
He will be. He says. He delights in the company of men, and we don't know why.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things is that, and St. Alphonsus brings this out beautifully, his love for us is freely given. There isn't a grain of self-interest in it.
Right.
He loves us because he chooses to. That's it. Full stop. If you think about it, all of our loves and affections are based upon something.
Exactly.
Not his.
Exactly. So that's why I read this, is because you meditate. There are meditations to understand the aspects of God. Well, not understand. Like, I still don't understand. It's a mystery.
No.
But reflections on who God is, not just on your situation, but who God is, as he draws you close in adoration. And so this is, I've added this to my repertoire. I like variety now. I jump around on my adoration. I do, because sometimes, you get a restless spirit, you're upset, you feel weakened spiritually.
Yeah.
I always do deliverance prayers for protection against the demons. This is one of our best-selling books. This is, I pretty regularly bring this, but sometimes I don't bring this. Sometimes I bring Mother Angelica's Eucharistic Adoration, Manual for Eucharistic Adoration. This is a very different field. This is a field where she brings about very tender, intimate communication with God. It's a very different feeling than these other things. So, and I think variety is kind of important with adoration. You don't go with the same routine. Keep it. And I feel this is important because what Saint Francis de Sales says. He says, basically, when you're doing devotion, do on what you feel like. Basically, he says it more eloquently than that. But what really touches you, what really touches you, and different things touch us on different days. So,
and at different times, in different ways.
Yeah.
And of course, when you speak about different people, that's just one person. You multiply it by everybody, and it's an amazing thing. But yeah, so that's a grand book to push. St. Alphonsus is always good.
It's especially grand because this is such a cheap book. This and the secret of the rosary. Look,
yes.
I'm gonna give you a shopping tip, okay? Because we have free shipping on orders over $25.
Excuse me, where's the free shipping?
The free shipping is at tumblerhouse.com.
But it's over $25.
Over $25, yeah. So, for example, Puritan's Empire is strategically $24.95. See, so you're 5 cents short for free shipping. So, for example, if you buy Vicars of Christ or Puritan's Empire, get this little book, and you're basically getting it for free. You swap out the shipping charges, and you get a nice little extra book. Secret of the Rosary is another one you can do that for. Or we've got a lot of little booklets on Saint Joseph. A lot of cute little booklets we have. So if you've got a small
stocking stuffers for Christmas.
Brilliant, Charles. Brilliant. Wow, you are going to get a fat Christmas bonus for that one.
I guess I'm not entirely odious.
You're not. Well done. So keep that in mind, because some of these people they just buy like Puritan's Empire. And it's like, just add on a little book, and you basically are getting it for free. So that's my shopping tip of the day at tumblerhouse.com.
And I have a bit of advice for you.
Okay.
Christmas is coming. The geese are getting fat. Please to put a penny in the old man's hat. If you hand a penny, a halfpenny will do. If you hand a halfpenny, God bless you.
I love that.
And just having, as I said, filled on goose today, it's very much in my mind.
Okay, so that'll do for the show. Any closing thoughts, Charles?
Yeah, there are. We're getting closer to. It'll be Thanksgiving when we see this. It'll be Thanksgiving. Will be what? Actually, it's not this coming week. It's next week. But Thanksgiving is coming. Remember, if you feel like having, instead of a Twilight Zone or a Perry Mason marathon, if you want to have an off-the-menu marathon for Thanksgiving, it doesn't cost anything.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time. And remember, if it's Monday,
it's off the menu.
And the soul you save
may be your own. God bless and take care, everyone.